Bowl 56 between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Rams. Chris Meaney and Jeff Ratcliffe here with you for the next hour or so. We are going to talk sides, totals, props, touchdown props, same game parlays, best bets. We're going to have some fun in the show, some rapid fire questions as well. Jeff and I have a couple for you guys. If you are hanging out with us live, we appreciate you. Any questions, please leave them there in the YouTube section of this show. We're also going to hear from Matthew Freedman, Benny Ricciardi, and Gilles Gallant on this show as well. Jeff, what's up, man? Rams and Bengals, we've made it. It's a pretty enticing matchup as well.
It really is, and I'm glad you said the actual number of the Super Bowl. It looked like a shirt size to me, so 56, except for 50. I knew which one that one was. I never know. I'm not up on my Roman numerals, but I tell you what, I am excited to see this matchup of two young coaches. Sean McVay has already been there as a head coach. Zach Taylor's been there, just not as a head coach yet. And I'm excited to see how Sean Payton won't be there. Sean McVay has learned from the experience of going against the master, Bill Belichick, of being the head coach now for a better part, a half decade into his tenure as the head coach, of having a quarterback who is now finally capable of running his offense and having all of this firepower, not only on the offensive side, but the defensive side as well. And then on the other side, I mean, hey, all eyes are on Joe Burrow. All eyes are on Jamar Chase. We have the comeback player of the year. We have the offensive rookie of the year. We have a defense that has dramatically improved over last year as well. We have a team that is gelled, a team with swag, a city that has been there so close before multiple times and now gets another shot. Unlikely that we have two number 4 seeds, but I am so fired up for this game.
Yeah, me too. You mentioned McVay and also Zach Taylor. There's a lot of cool storylines in this Super Bowl matchup, of course, when the Rams were there against the Pats. And you mentioned Sean McVay. I think, Bill Belichick just fooled him. Like, he was ready for the defense that the Pats had all year, and they kind of switched it up on him, and he just wasn't ready for that. So I'm sure he's got a couple things that he's thinking about in case he does have to make some adjustments this time around. And Zach Taylor, who was on that coaching staff as the quarterback coach, now as 3 years in the league as a head coach, it's remarkable to see both sides of it, Jeff, right? You have the Bengals, who were a 4-win team last year, the worst team in football 2 years ago. Burrow looking to become the first player ever to win a national championship, the Heisman Trophy, and a Super Bowl, looking to become the first player ever to win a Super Bowl, like the first number 1 overall pick, mind you, to win a Super Bowl within 2 years. You have two former number 1 overall quarterbacks here. So one of them will win and become the 9th quarterback, the 9th first overall pick to win a Super Bowl. And there's all kinds of just like little things too. The head doctor for the Rams did the surgery on Joe Burrow's knee a couple years ago. So there's a lot of neat storylines in this game. Really, really looking forward to it. Opened up at 4, moved to 4.5, went down to 3.5 yesterday at Caesars. Now I'm seeing 4 in most spots. The total is at 50.5, and it's dropped down here to 48.5 as well. And then the side for the Rams, Jeff, just talk to me about a team being all in. They've traded 6 first-round picks since 2018. They don't have one until 2024. They bring in Matthew Stafford. They bring in Von Miller. They bring in Odell Beckham Jr. This is a team that is absolutely all in. Would you consider it a fail if they weren't to win this game?
And by the way, all those Joe Burrow things, but yet still could be the 3rd Joe to win the Super Bowl and a national championship, which is bizarre. It bucks the trend. And in a copycat league where everybody does the same thing, if you do something different, perhaps you do have an advantage. That difference is not coveting the early draft picks and pushing all in here. It's a unique approach, but it's an approach where you do have, as I said, firepower on both sides of the ball, and really, really impressed with Von Miller hitting the ground running, with Odell hitting the ground running, with Stafford really seeming to have a command over that offense in year 1. All of it noteworthy, all of it very exciting.
Yeah, the number 1 team in the NFL in 11 personnel, the number 2 team in the NFL in 11 personnel. These two teams do have some similarities as well. I wanted to give some love to FTNBets.com. If you were looking to be part of the FTN fam, head on over to FTNBets.com/pricing. You can see all the packages available to you. The betting package, all bets, all picks, all sports from everybody. You are crushing. the NBA props. You're up 60 plus units. That's fantastic. But what I love so much about this betting package, and something that we've just changed things up over in year 2 here at FTN, is that not only do you get the NFL picks, of course, we have a lot available over at ftnbets.com, but you're going to get the NBA picks, you're going to get the PGA picks. NASCAR is just started here. You're going to get the NHL picks as well. And before you know it, believe it or not, the MLB will come back. So ftnbets.com/pricing. And if you use the promo code SUPER, you can get 20% off not just that package, but any package that we have available over at FTN, whether it's ftnfantasy.com, your way too early rankings live on the site. We got our baseball draft kit live as well. And those who like to play a little bit of DFS, ftndaily.com, all packages using that promo code SUPER, 20% off. Also, speaking of SUPER, something really cool that we have over at ftnbets.com, a Super Bowl betting guide. You got the betting breakdown from Kevin Adams. You got best bets from multiple books, PointsBet, FanDuel, BetMGM, Caesars, DK. We have articles for the best over-under props, Super Bowl betting promotions, novelty props, player matchup wagers, you name it. It is all there available to you over at ftnbets.com. So with that, let's get things underway. We have the touchdown prop king himself. It's Mr. Gilles Gallant, the host of Touchdown Town and Dog Day Afternoon over at FTN. He is in here next, and he's going to give us a few of his favorite touchdown props for the big game. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot to get to here on this show. Watching the Big Game Super Show powered by FTN. Chris Meaney and Jeff Ratcliffe with you as we bring in the sharp-dressed man with the shades. It's Mr. Gilles Gallant, G-Dog 5000 on the Twitter machine, the king of NFL touchdown props. Welcome in, dude, man. Like, you just been rocking those shades all day or what?
Oh, it's big time, man. I've been walking around pretty much doing my laundry, everything else. When you got shades on like this, man, it just empowers you. So I think with the showtime like this, you got to have some shades on.
I agree. So you are the host of Touchdown Town. We have another edition of your show, which will be live on Sunday at 1 Eastern for those to check out. You'll have several touchdown props for us on that show. If you are subscribed to our FTN YouTube page, make sure you set the reminder and follow Gilles on Twitter so you can get that show available to you right away when you guys do go live. Let's start with a guy that you gave some love to on Mean Streets earlier today, is Odell Beckham Jr. I think there may be a little bit of a divide when it comes to OBJ throughout this show. I like him, and you seem to like him. And let's start there. You think he finds the end zone?
I do. Are we hinting that Jeff's not high on OBJ? Is that what we're doing?
Maybe just have to
okay. All right. Well, let me make a case. All right. So for me, I'm going to be betting on Odell Beckham to score a touchdown at plus 150. And the reason why I'm betting him, and just a heads up, it's still around plus 140 at BetMGM if you want to bet on him to score an anytime touchdown. And I think he offers the best value just based on odds and circumstance. So when you look at the odds board for the touchdown market, you know, most of the guys that you're going to be looking at, like a Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, you're looking at minus odds. It's difficult to kind of justify a touchdown bet with a minus odds. But this is why I think Odell is the guy. 6 touchdowns in 11 games since joining the Rams. And there's a variety of ways that he could score the ball. Because for me, I always think of him high pointing a pass or, beating a defense over the top. But 5 of those 6 touchdowns that he scored with the Rams has actually been in a goal line situation. Actually, within the 10-yard line, a couple of them were at 2 yards, 1 yard. You would think it would be the Sony Michel show or the Cam Akers show, but you're actually seeing from Sean McVay's offense that they will go to their wide receivers in that goal line stance. Now, obviously, if he can't score at the goal line, I still feel pretty encouraged by it because they could find him with the long game. Stafford, we shared this with FTN data earlier today. His deep passer rating is 134.5 during the playoffs, up from 91.5 during the regular season. So for me, that's very encouraging that he might be able to beat some defenses over the top, especially when you look at the Bengals defense that was bottom 5 in passing plays allowed of 20 plus yards or more and bottom 10 in plays of 40 yards or more. And then just looking at this most recent game when they played against the Chiefs, obviously most of those touchdowns were scored within the red zone, but they gave up 4 passing plays of 20 yards or more against Mahomes and that offense. And for me, when you're looking at the Rams touchdown scores and the market, you've got Kupp at minus 160. Doesn't really entice me. The uncertainty of Tyler Higbee, not really sure if he's going to play. Kendall Blanton is kind of unproven. I mean, he did score a touchdown in the divisional round, but again, just not feeling great about it. Jefferson's kind of faded into the background as Odell's role has increased on that offense. And Ben Skowronek, I'm still mad about. I didn't even bet him last week to score a touchdown, and that touchdown that he dropped, hands like a frying pan, man. I just cannot believe that he would drop that. So for me, I trust OBJ the most for the Los Angeles Rams to score a touchdown in the big game.
I think the number's fair. Actually, the price is probably better than the probability. We're talking close to 50% chance of scoring a touchdown. So honestly, you need about plus 110 for that to make any sense. So you're getting a good price on him. My main concern isn't necessarily a touchdown. It's more the volume with him. So I don't mind this play at all. But Gilles, if you're looking on the other side of this game, I know everybody's looking at Jamar Chase. Do you think he offers the best value, or is there better value elsewhere with the Bengals pass catchers?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't think Jamar offers the best value. For me, the best value for the Bengals, I think, is T. Higgins right now. I grabbed him at plus 165 for an anytime touchdown. He's actually up to plus 175 now at FanDuel, checking just before the show started. And obviously with Jamar Chase, the hype train with him and Burrow, you kind of get a little caught up into it, maybe thinking that Chase is going to have maybe a 2-touchdown game or something along those lines. But I think we're forgetting about how good T. Higgins is. This is a quality wide receiver who picks up a ton of yardage. So let's just look at the last 2 playoff games. Higgins has 199 yards receiving on 13 catches and 19 targets. The reason why I bring that up, though, is that both of those games, the Bengals offense was a little stalled in the first half. They were almost kind of trying to play pickup and catch up against these teams. And for me, if we're just talking about how this game is going to play out, now I don't feel great about taking the Rams on a full game spread, but I think the Rams are going to win the game. So if I think the Rams are going to win the game, my first instinct is, how does the Bengals perform when they lose? So if we look at the last 4 games that the Bengals played where they lost, Higgins went off. He averaged 106 yards receiving, had double-digit targets, double-digit catches for most of those games. That's why I also like his over 68.5 yards receiving for this game. And I just think that Chase, again, I'm not really sure how much Jalen Ramsey and what he was talking about during the week, if whether or not that's actually going to stick. But I'm going to take him at his word that he's going to try to shadow Jamar Chase as much as he can. And I think as a result, Jamar Chase is going to get a ton of attention from the Rams secondary. So I also think Burrow is going to throw a lot. You saw his pass completions and attempts climb each game, as it seems to be that they were trailing. He had 38 pass attempts in the conference championship game. So for me, automatically, I'm looking at, okay, if I think the Bengals are going to lose, I think T. Higgins is going to have a big day. And I'm going to take his anytime touchdown at plus 165 because I think it's better value than taking Jamar Chase at minus 110.
And I like that call out because usually I find that, hey, if the masses gravitate in one direction, the value is in the other direction. Mm-hmm. And that price point right now, especially if you're talking plus 175, that price point is a very nice price point. We know the upside is there. And it's just all about value, especially when you're making these touchdown props, Gilles. So I like that call out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
he seems to be the forgotten one in this offense, right? It's Jamar Chase, Jamar Chase, Jamar Chase. I mean, we all know Burrow was the first overall pick a couple years ago, but their first pick in the second round was this new fancy toy in T. Higgins, and he's been nothing but spectacular. Yeah, he's been awesome. He's been amazing. He's been a red zone target, from day one, really. I remember his breakout game. I think he had 3 touchdowns against the Eagles at the Link, and he had like almost double-digit targets in the end zone his next 4 games. So he has been an absolute beast.
Letting us know about a guy scoring.
It always sticks with me. Yeah, they all stick with me. All right, they all stick with me. You and I always chat quarterbacks when we talk touchdowns. You were on Mean Streets for every single week, and we always, when we teed up the Thursday night football game, we always looked at a quarterback. Are you looking at a quarterback to find the end zone for the Super Bowl?
I got to, man. I have to. Anybody who has watched me on Mean Streets throughout the year or has followed my touchdown bets, Joe Burrow is my white whale. Now, I bet him personally, and I've scored on him during the season, and he's only scored 2 touchdowns this year. So I've been able to cash on him. But official plays and public plays, he always just kind of falls short for me. But we're going to go back to him. And for me, I bet a lot of quarterbacks this year against the Rams. The Rams defense, I think we see Aaron Donald, we see Von Miller, and I think maybe we overrate them just a tiny bit from a rush defense standpoint. Now, for me, they allowed 4 different quarterbacks to score touchdowns on them this year. You have Justin Fields, Tom Brady, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to pretend like these guys are speedsters out there who are, making guys miss all the time. Tannehill maybe to a lesser extent. But the thing that was constant with them is that they were all plus 600 or better from an odds standpoint to score. And big picture here, they allow 5 yards per carry to opposing quarterbacks during the regular season. I think the playoff stats as well are a little skewed because they face Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, and a beat-up Kyler Murray. I'm not imagining any of those guys are going to be scrambling for big yards against them. Now, also, as I mentioned, he scored 2 touchdowns this year. I just feel like in an elimination game, so generally when I bet touchdown scores, Jeff and Chris, I generally loathe taking motivation as a reason, unless it's like week 18 and maybe there's a contract incentive reasoning for it, like Tyler Lockett did in week 18 against the Cardinals. Now, when it's an elimination game like this, I find that players, especially in the playoffs, they might go that little extra mile. They'll put their body on the line in a playoff game knowing that this is the last game because they have the entire offseason to recover. And I know it sounds corny to use motivation as a reason here, but just look at Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, coming into these playoffs, hadn't scored a touchdown in over 5 seasons. Since the Lions made the playoffs, that was 2016. Now look at him. The Rams are in the Super Bowl, and he rushed for 1 in back-to-back weeks. So again, I'm just saying that sometimes we look at the stats when it comes to quarterback touchdown rushing rate, and maybe we kind of talk ourselves out of those bets. And if you had talked yourself into a Stafford bet in those 2 games, you're looking at plus 1,000 or better. So when I locked this in last week, Burrow's odds, they were around like plus 500 at best at like DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM. But when I saw it, it's plus 650 at Bet365. I was like, bang, that is great value. I'm locking this in. Rams have allowed 4 touchdowns to quarterbacks against quarterbacks that I don't consider more athletic than what Joe Burrow can do. So give me that Joe Burrow touchdown at plus 650 as my long shot for the big game.
You've heard it here then. If you're watching right now, Joe Mixon is going to have 2 rushing attempts from the 1-yard line, get stuffed, and then Burrow's going to put it in. I do like that, though. And Gilles, just to even piggyback off of that, I think that the rushing attempts for both quarterbacks is far too low at 2.5. So you could double dip. Remember, hey, if either of them have the ball at the very end of the game, they're going to kneel at least once, maybe more than that.
That's
and
true.
Those count as
Very
going attempts as well. So I love that call out. Gilles, the touchdown stuff, you've converted me. I've historically been like, not going to do it. You've converted me this season. So shout out to you.
There is one question on the way out here. We can just address it. I think we all know the answer, and even Brennan Gilden, he's pretty sharp. I think he knows the answer as well. But OBJ says he's going to throw a touchdown. Would that count as an anytime touchdown if he tossed one? It would not.
It would not. It would be nice, but then again, everybody would bet quarterbacks to score touchdowns if that was the case. No, but there are some props out there of multiple players and pass attempts. I know that, for example, there's over 1.5 pass attempts from the Rams sitting there at plus money, for example. If you're looking at that, maybe that would be the angle to consider.
There is something to be said about taking these quarterbacks, though, right, Jeff? Like if they air one out and there's a PI and all of a sudden you get the play down, near the goal line. I mean, that stuff, we see that all the time, Jeff.
We do.
Yeah.
I don't hate it.
Do. No, not at all. All right, Jill, you can take off the glasses after, or you can just rock them the rest of the day. We do appreciate you. I'm sure you're going to have them for Sunday at 1 Eastern, your show, Touchdown Town. We're going to talk more about this game from a side and total standpoint. We got Matthew Freedman in here next. He is the host of the Degenerate Sports Betting Show. He's in here next. Keep her locked. Welcome back to the Big Game Super Show powered by FTN. Chris Meaney and Jeff Ratcliffe with you as we bring in Matthew Freedman. Of course, you can catch Matthew all over FTNBets.com. He is also the host of the Degenerate Sports Betting Show at Matt F. the Oracle on the Twitter machine. What's going on, my man?
Hey, it's good to be here. I didn't get the memo on the sports jackets. You guys are rocking them. Jill was rocking it in the last segment. I could run to the office really quick or the closet, get something, but no, I don't have it, but it's good to be here with you.
I think you're looking pretty sharp, dude. I think you're looking pretty sharp. Okay, let's talk about this game from a sides and a total standpoint. Let's start from a side standpoint. We've seen it kind of move around a little bit, Freedman. We saw 4, 4.5, and then 3.5 yesterday over at Caesars for the Rams here, the home team. Well, actually, they're not even technically the home team. Cincinnati is the home team, but this is their building here. What do you make of this side as it's kind of stabilized to 4 for the Rams? Where are you leaning?
Yeah, I'm going with the Bengals. There's still a rogue 4.5 out there at PointsBet. If you like the Bengals, I think that's the place to get it, to get that extra half point there. But yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this game in Los Angeles, conceivably the Rams have something of a home field advantage, or, if they were a normal team, normal circumstances, you'd think maybe they have home field advantage, but they really don't. As we saw in the NFC Championship game, SoFi Stadium was littered with 49ers fans, and head coach Sean McVay, in his 5 years with the team, he's 20-20-2 against the spread at home. You compare that to his record when he's on the road or in a neutral location, 28-20 against the spread. Joe Burrow, though, in the NFL and college, he's been totally fine when he's been someplace other than home. In the NFL, 10-5 against the spread on the road. Burrow in college, 11-3 against the spread when he was on the road or at a neutral field. And also, Burrow's been very good as an underdog. 12-7 against the spread, 7-3 against the spread this year when getting points. And as a collegiate underdog, 5-1 against the spread. You put all that together. What it basically means, bottom line, the Bengals are a league best 6-1 against the spread as road underdogs this year. When they have been visitors, the market has just tended to be low on them, and they have significantly and routinely outperformed expectations. And look at the numbers for these teams. Joe Burrow is tied with Patrick Mahomes for number 2 in composite expected points added and completion percentage over expectation. The only quarterback he trails is Aaron Rodgers, who just won the MVP. So Burrow on a per attempt basis, throwing the ball, has been right up there with the best quarterbacks in the league. So on offense, the Bengals can put up points. And as we've seen in the playoffs, they have been more willing to let Burrow play. They have thrown at a much higher rate in the playoffs than they did during the regular season. And on defense, I'm not going to say that they're like a great team on defense, but I think they're sufficient. Since the week 10 bye, especially, they're number 9 in defensive EPA per play, and they've allowed just 2 teams to score more than 28 points. That's the Chargers in week 13 and the Chiefs in week 17. Now, holistically, the Bengals, if you look at what they did during the regular season, they were just 10-7 in their record. That's barely above mediocre, right? They are not a heralded team entering the Super Bowl. But if you look at the teams who are most comparable to them over the past 20 years to have played in the Super Bowl, we're talking about the 2007 Giants, the 2008 Cardinals, the 2010 Packers, 2011 Giants, 2012 Ravens. All of these teams covered. 4 of them won the Super Bowl outright. Even though the Bengals look like this is a team that's a year too early, they could win this game. Like, I think they are legitimately live as underdogs. I like them at 4.5. If you get that number out there at PointsBet, that is where I'm going on the side.
Now, Matt, you may not have worn a jacket like Gilles, but Gilles also dressed exactly like Luke Wilson from Royal Tenenbaums. So, I mean, he just brought the A game there. Now, I agree with you on the 4.5. In fact, I do have that up right now at ftnbets.com. Remember, if you're watching along, you can go over, check it out. I do have my old school pad because I got to be in the lab with the pen and the pad getting these projections off. And I did get projections off for the game. Right now, my projected score is the Rams 25.6 to the Bengals 23.2. Quick math, that's 2.4 points. So I think you could play this one down even a little bit further. 3 is the cutoff. I do think ultimately this moves because we know the betting public does one thing. Well, they do 2 things. They bet on overs and they bet on underdogs. And the underdog, both the money line and the spread, I believe, are going to move as more casual money comes flooding in today, tomorrow, and early on Sunday. Right now, too, I actually have the money line at plus 115 for the Bengals. So if you think they can win outright, you can still get it, I believe, at plus 170 on some books right now. It is the time to move on that because I think that number is only going to go down from here.
Yeah, and also when we talk about the total, this opened up, Matthew, at 50.5, and it kind of quickly went down to 48.5. And just hearing Jeff talk about maybe some casual money coming in here, we could see that rise a little bit. Talk to me about that and where you lean when it comes to the total.
Yeah, it opened at 50.5. And normally we see, as Jeff mentioned, casual bettors, they tend to bet overs. And so we would normally see this line move up. I didn't bet it right away because I thought it would move up. And then, sharp money quickly looked at that line and bet it down. I still think there's a little bit of value at 48.5, but it's not as if I love this line. But look, I'm a degenerate. I host the Degenerate Sports Betting Podcast. I'm going to have a bet on the side and the total, and I'm going under 48.5. McVay, Bengals head coach Zach Taylor, they know each other well. They worked together in the past. Familiarity tends to breed offensive inefficiency and conservatism. And both of these coaches on their own are risk-averse situational decision makers. Just look at how often these guys settle for field goals. Over the past half decade, no team has attempted more field goals than the Rams have, at 2.3 per game. And Bengals kicker Evan McPherson, he's attempted an obscene number of field goals, 3.1 per game since the Week 10 bye. In the playoffs, that number's ratcheted up all the way to 4 field goal attempts in each game. That's outrageous. I think this is going to be more of a field goal kicking contest than a touchdown scoring shootout. And I know that Jill probably wouldn't like hearing me say that, but I think that's how this game is going to be. I think we're going to see a lot of field goals. Think about how conservative McVay was as a play caller a few years ago in the Super Bowl. I think we see something kind of in that vein, even if he tries to loosen it up a little bit more. So I will take under 48.5. Although, again, I will say I don't see a world of value in this number. If I had to take only the side or the total, I would be still going towards the Bengals at 4.5.
Yeah, I do agree with that. My projected over-under, if you were doing the math at home, shout out to you for doing the math at home, but it is 48.7. So, basically saying that right now, the over-under is spot on. There's no meat on the bone whatsoever. However, if the line does move in the next 48 hours, give or take here, that's where we may have an opportunity. And I only think it's going to move one direction. I do not think it moves down. I think it moves up. If we get it up to 49.5, then it becomes somewhat appealing. But it's still super tight. I don't think I want to make a play on that one. The play that I have is the play that I'm sticking with. It's Bengals plus 4.5.
Wow, so all three of us here are on Cincinnati as well. That's a bet that I put in the bet tracker immediately when the matchup was given to us. Cincinnati at +4. I kind of have a lean to the over, though. I'm right there with you, Jeff, on your projections. I feel like it's a 27-24 game. I know Freedman is the field goal prop master. I mean, both of these guys at 1.5 around -115, -120. I think both of them. I know we're talking switching kind of to props here, and we'll get into that with Jeff and his favorite here in the next segment. But I would imagine you are in on both kickers to have a couple field goals here this weekend, Freedman.
Absolutely. And I'll just say it's not going to happen. Evan McPherson, 150 to 1 to be MVP of the Super Bowl. You never know. That's my real long shot degenerate bet. But, that goes right in line with how I see this game playing out. It's something of a kick fest. And that's why I go towards the under.
Yeah, I'm feeling like a 27-24 game. Just since we're here, I know we didn't really plan this. Can we get predictions? Are you on this? You said you feel like the Bengals could win this game. Do they?
Yeah, I think they will.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. So I would think, let's just say the Evan McPherson scenario plays out where McPherson has something like 4 field goals, right? I don't know. I mean, let's say this is like a 21-17 type of game, right? That's where I would generally put this.
I'm trying to do the math of 4 field goals.
That's not good. That's not. I'm saying,
so
like,
there's a 4 field goals, a touchdown, and a safety to get you to 21.
Yeah, I would say, or like, something like that.
Safety on Matty Stafford. I could see that. Like, I do believe that narrative there. I think the over on both of those kickers is very much in play. If anything we've learned from the playoffs this year, it's going to be a 3-point game. It's going to be a 3-point game.
No doubt.
Is it the Bengals that win by 3 points or the Rams? Now, also, though, I did get this question. Hey, one of the benefits of being a subscriber at FTN is you can get into the Discord. We have one-on-one. Matt has his own one-on-one area where you can ask him anything, even unrelated to football, whatever. Same thing for me. And somebody asked me, what am I missing with the game-winning margin? Because right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, -110 on either side, the winning margin line is 8.5. And I said, wait, be careful, because the winning margin and the spread are two totally different things. And if you look historically at the winning margin, that line is spot on. That is a really tough one to decide. So be careful if you happen to spot that one out. If it seems too good to be true, then yes, it is too good to be true, and do your research a little bit more.
Freedman, do you want to touch on that?
Actually, I love the winning margin bet. I'll be the donkey that's betting the under on it, because I do think that this is like a 3 to 4 point game either way. And so I think even if there's a touchdown, you have the extra margin of a 2-point conversion within there. So I'll be the donkey that's betting the under on it.
I love it too.
Historically, Jeff is right. I think with this matchup in particular, I think there is some value on taking the under there.
Man, I try to not to think as like a football fan. I want to see points. Can we all agree we want to see some points? We want to see obviously our bets cash. I'm going to stay away from the total altogether. I do have that lean for the over, but come on, give me a shootout here this weekend. I would love to see a lot of points. If the Bengals do win, I don't know if you guys know this, CJ Uzma said he would have a bath in Skyline chili. So that's Is that not a reason to? No, you don't want to see that. You don't want to see that? Are you kidding me?
I just can't even imagine. I will tell you this: having spent plenty of time in Cincinnati, I love Cincinnati, and I love Skyline Chili's hot sauce. But I'm sorry. I know the Cincy people are not going to love that one, but woo, that's dedication right there from CJ.
We'll get you out of here on this, Freedman. You asked everybody if they could choose one Guns N' Roses song for the rest of their life. Man. What would it be? But I don't think you gave an answer. What's yours?
I didn't give it. I don't know if I could. I'll say Welcome to the Jungle.
Welcome to the Jungle.
You know, like as my get up song, you know, like
it's a good pump me up song.
Yeah, like as a pump me up song.
Yeah. Jeff's thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's so many good ones from.
There are a lot of good ones.
Yeah. Can I just choose an album because they don't have that many?
Yeah, of course.
Not Chinese Democracy. How about that?
Right.
Yeah.
Dude, we would have booted you off the show if that was it. Jokes aside. Freedman, always a pleasure, dude. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Again, check out his show, The Degenerate Sports Betting Show. And he's also crushing it with Ratcliffe when it comes to NBA props. And as we said earlier, you have the FTN betting package. You get all the picks from everybody over at FTN Bets and access to chat with a guy like Freedman at any moment. He's always up. Seems to be always up answering all of your questions. Jeff's going to obviously hang around with us next. We are going to talk about his favorite props for the Super Bowl. Keep her locked. Watching the Big Game Super Show powered by FTN. Chris Meaney and Jeff Ratcliffe still here with you, and we are going to ride together here in this segment here for you. We're going to talk about some of Jeff's favorite props for the Super Bowl. I got to ask you about your strategy. I know part of my strategy is to take a look at your projections over at FTNBets.com. Not going to lie, but I do have to ask what your strategy is heading into the big game on Sunday.
Well, I think you make a good point, though, right from the gate. Shameless promotion, but shameless promotion aside, I think the number one mistake that a lot of people make when they head into sports betting for the first time, and by the way, if you're a fantasy person, like you follow me, you're a fantasy person, this is a pretty natural transition to bet on player props. You are picking over or under a particular stat. We know all the stats. We know the players well. You might not be comfortable with the odds just yet, but you know what? It's one of those things that it looks very complicated, and then all of a sudden it's not complicated anymore, and you understand it's pretty easy. So just, pick it up quickly. But what I see people do is they will start doing some crazy stuff. They'll start betting on wild things. They will bet on what they think, feel, or believe. And hey, in your own life, think, feel, or believe whatever you want, baby. It doesn't matter to me. But when it comes to sports betting, those who bet based on what they think, feel, believe, whatever their opinions are, you're the reason why sports books exist. You are the reason why there are most folks out there are long-term losing bettors. I can't do that. I'm not going to bet on what I think, feel, or believe. The only person that I know who can do that is Chris Meaney on hockey, and that's it. That's it. I need projections. I need numbers to help me out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare those projections to the lines out there. We have that for you over at FTN Bets. By the way, my projections are compared to the existing lines. And then I'm going to spot the bets with the biggest edge. And then I'm going to make those bets. I only want to get my money in when there's an edge. I don't want to get my money in just because I think something's going to happen. I want to get my money in when I know I have an edge. So that's probably the biggest thing right there. Shop around a little bit too for the best lines, but play with the edge. And if the bet isn't there, you don't have to make the bet, Chris.
No, absolutely. You don't got to bet for just the sake of making the bet. A couple things. When you asked me that a couple days ago, I felt pretty silly to tell you that I don't have any projections when it comes to hockey. It's just kind of following the game, but it's something that we're starting to incorporate here for those who do like the NHL shot props over at FTN. We're doing a lot of things here over at FTN, so hang on with us throughout. You mentioned shopping around. Let's talk about the free prop shop over at FTNBets.com, so you don't have to shop around. It's like Google search, type in Joe Mixon, and then you can see all of his odds, his rushing attempts, his catches, his receiving yards, rushing and receiving touchdowns. It's all there for you, so you don't have to shop around, and you can save a little bit of time. And also, speaking of edges, give a little bit of love to prizepicks.com and our free pick tracker over at ftndaily.com and your PrizePicks edge tool to find those edges. We're giving picks over at ftndaily.com for free. We all are. And again, if you use that promo code FTN, they'll match your first deposit 100% up to $100. And what I like about those props is we're talking single props here, and you can do some same game parlay stuff. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, Jeff. Is with Prize Picks, you can do a flex play and go 3 for 4. How many times have people out there watching and listening, you, myself, I got a 4-leg parlay, only 3 of them hit. It always seems to be the last one at the end of the night to ruin everything, but PrizePicks kind of covers you there. If you play the flex play option, 3 for 4, 4 for 5, 2 for 3, you're going to cash. So with that said, we've talked a lot about wide receivers and quarterbacks. I want to talk to you about Joe Mixon. I want to talk to you about some running backs. Talk to me about Joe. Is there a prop that you like when it comes to Mixon?
Yeah, by the way, PrizePicks, if you don't have sports betting legal in your state, PrizePicks very well might be. So you still have an opportunity there. And it's very similar. You're doing the similar concept, except there's no odds. So you don't even have to worry about that component. Right. So you're just picking over or under. Mixon certainly exceeded expectations this year. Just from an overall usage standpoint, true 3-down back, obviously showed the ability to stay healthy throughout the course of the season and has been a key factor. If they are successful, then he is getting the rock, and they've made it a point to give him the rock. In fact, over the course of the season, averaging up over 18 rushing attempts per game. Right now, the line on DraftKings Sportsbook, 16.5 rushing attempts, and it is juiced to the over, so you're getting minus 105 on the under right now. And why I love rushing attempts, it takes one of the variables out of the equation from a prediction standpoint. I don't have to worry about efficiency whatsoever. Heck, he could average negative yards per carry, which he probably won't, but he could be 5 yards per carry, 6, 3. I don't care. All I care about is the volume, so I don't have to predict one thing. That makes my job a little bit easier. I do think he goes way over this, not way over in that he's going to have 30 carries, but I think 18 to 19 carries is a nice baseline for expectation. He's topped this line in 8 of his last 10 games. So I like that over there on Mixon, 16.5 rushing attempts.
I was going to ask you, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you because things change, right? As people start to hammer some bets, we've seen, numbers go up and vice versa the other way. I was going to ask you how high you would go. So if you saw 18.5, would you take that?
No, that's too high. 17.5 if I'm getting, say I'm getting plus 110 or something along those lines on it. I'd have to have it, positive there. I can't have negative odds. So also, if you're following along, you'll sometimes hear people say, I have to hit a bet 52.4% of the time in order to be a long-term profitable bettor. Well, yes, that's true if the odds are minus 110. But if the odds are plus 110, you can hit that under 50% of the time and be a profitable bettor in the long term. So that really does change the outlook. Remember, with player props, another strategy it's not about winning every bet. Nobody out there wins every bet. And if they tell you they do, they are a liar. They are a screaming liar. What you're hoping to do is over the long term, make the smart plays, get your money in right. Because if you do that, you are going to be profitable over the long term. Variance hits everybody, and variance could hit in this instance here. But over the long term, you get your money in with an edge, you are going to make money as a sports bettor.
So you talk about Joe Mixon, and he has been a true bell cow back. Really, I mean, he's been involved through the air. He's got 15 targets here in the playoffs. He's got 29 targets in the last 5 games. But we've seen a little bit of Samaje Perine sprinkled in as well. I mean, he had a really nice catch and run for a touchdown against the Chiefs to kind of get them going offensively in that game. And, you know, you saw Joe Burrow in the game maybe kind of take some, like, not taking shots at him, but there was a moment where he was lined up on maybe the wrong side of the field, where if he was on the other side, he probably would have had another receiving yard touchdown. But he has been involved this season, sprinkled in a little bit, catching passes. Do you feel like is he going to be involved again in this big game?
I do think he's going to have to be. You can't just rely on Mixon. And, you know, he was a big surprise in the conference championship game, scoring the touchdown, 43 receiving yards. That was obviously a surprise, the usage overall. But as you mentioned, throughout the course of the season, yes, he has been used fairly heavily here. Now, what's interesting, I locked this in at FTNBets.com at over 8.5 receiving yards. It's 9.5 now, and some books have it 10.5. Before we started the broadcast, I don't have the live odds right this second. Of course, you can get them at FTN Bets, but 9.5 on DraftKings, minus 120 to the over. So juice to the over, I'm still taking it. 10.5 on FanDuel. I think that is still playable. I don't love it. That extra yard makes a world of difference to me. I will also say this, though, just a little bonus here with Samaje Perine. I got him at 2.5 rushing yards on the over. It moved up to 3.5. But basically, we're saying, do you think he has 2 carries? Because if he does, he's probably going to be over that as well. You know, a lot of people, Chris, are going to gravitate to Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and all the big names in this game. Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's lines are solid. Like, there is no wiggle room on those lines. Whereas some of the lesser players, I often find those are the better markets or better plays. So Samaje Perine, not the star name in this game, but does offer some of the better betting value.
Ah, man, I love it. And again, this kind of just ties into what we've been talking about with the prop shop and just surfing around. I have some stuff here for you. So rushing yards, 2.5 at BetMGM at minus 110, 2.5 minus 110 at FanDuel, 2.5 minus 130 at DraftKings, 5.5 plus 130 over at PointsBet. And for his receiving yards, 9.5, you can get that at minus 110 over at BetMGM and DraftKings, but most other spots have it at 10.5, and it's juiced to the over at minus 115 over at PointsBet. So again, just a prime example of just instead of surfing around and searching at what book has the best odds, you just head on over to FTNBets.com and check out that amazing prop shop. Okay, you got another one lined up for us here? What's your third one?
Yeah, well, we do have to at least mention one of the bigger stars in the game, even though he's been overshadowed, Odell Beckham Jr. There's a lot of attention on him, and I think that's actually the thing we should be paying the most attention to is the attention on him. Cooper Kupp is going to be in the slot primarily in this game. So on the outside, there is a possibility that Odell Beckham Jr. is shadowed by Chidobe Awuzie. I do not have that currently projected in the wide receiver cornerback matchup tool over at FTNFantasy.com and FTNDaily.com. However, there is the possibility. And if that does happen, that could perhaps, I'm not saying Awuzie shuts him down. Don't go at me on Twitter. What I am saying, though, is it may cause Matthew Stafford to slightly shy away from the matchup a little bit. So the line right now, 5.5 receptions. I am hoping that people hammer this enough so that the line goes to 6.5, in which case it's an easy under, but I will play the under right now. I don't think it's going to get hammered, by the way, because I'm showing minus 135 on the under at DraftKings as the best odds out there. So I hit the over on this one. He has only topped this 3 times since week 12. I'm not going to count week 10 when he first was traded to the Rams because he was still just getting integrated. But week 12, once he kind of hit the ground running with the team, there's been 10 games. He's topped it 3 times. Now, 2 of those have occurred in the last 2 weeks, but I do think this is a different scenario here. And over that span, he's averaging under 4.5 receptions per game as well. So I think this is more par for the course for Odell. 4 or 5 catches seems very reasonable, in which case puts the under in play.
You're killing me. You're killing me. It's one of my favorite bets, man. I think he's going to play a big factor in this game. I really do think that. And we could save it for a little bit later on. I do have him involved in one of my my same game parlays, but I've just seen him trend up. And yeah, you're right, maybe some double. But if there's some man coverage on him, if they are bringing a safety over the top and trying to double Cooper Kupp, man on man coverage, he's been really good in these playoffs. He's had 11 targets and he's caught 10 of those 11 targets. It's tough. It is all the lines, right? What we talked with Jake on his show, All in Football, which you can also go back and check that out on our FTN YouTube page. We talked about these lines just being spot on across the board. Was it difficult for you to come in here? I know that you have more than 3 props over in our FTN Bet Tracker, but was it difficult for you to hammer 3 that you really, really liked?
Well, I think about player props slightly differently than other people out there. I like any bet that I have an edge on, right? So I don't think that like there's any that I like more or less. Like people have noted this with my NBA props. I put a lot of NBA props in because I think that we have a lot of edge on NBA props. Now, if you do follow along in a bet tracker, you've seen like preferred plays are, some of them are preferred plays. So you get that. I try my hardest to say that this one has the best chance of hitting, but I'm not going to make the play if I don't like it. This game was hard though, Chris. You're exactly right. It was very difficult. The lines are tight. The betting public has gotten sharper, and the sharps have gotten sharper in player props over the last half decade. So it doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room. But I think I have about 10 up right now at FTN Bets. So plenty of action to be played in this game, even with tight lines.
Yeah, and speaking of props, I have to give you props because I have a hard time finding some value in unders, but I think there really is a lot of value in unders when it comes to the NBA, and that's what I've noticed with your props. You really are just hammering a couple unders, and you seem to be getting them pretty easily as well. We're going to continue the show here. We got another guest lined up for you. It's Benny Ricciardi, the host of Betting with Benny, and we're going to talk about some of his best bets for the Super Bowl. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Big Game Super Show as we continue here, powered by FTN Network. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us as we bring in Benny Ricciardi. You know him, of course, with Betting from Benny. Also, we've been pumping the FTN Bet Tracker. You get everybody's picks across all the sports, and Benny is covering a lot of those sports for us over at ftnbets.com. What's going on, sir? How are you? You're looking pretty sharp.
Yeah, not as sharp as you guys. I mean, you guys got the jacket. I heard Freedman didn't get the memo about it, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens. Matthew Stafford. Let's talk about Matthew Stafford. We've kind of hit all over the place now on some pass catchers to score some touchdowns. Jeff and I were talking about some running backs here. Matthew Stafford's passing yards prop is at 279.5. He needs 315 passing yards in this game to have the most passing yards in playoff history. Let's just talk about the 279.5 line. Where do you lean there?
Yeah, so we could actually even get this. I lean to the under, so let's start there. And we could actually even get this at a better number than 279.5. FanDuel today has it at 283.5. At Standard Juice at minus 110 right there. So obviously, if you're looking for an under, you always want to play whatever the highest number is there and take the under on that number. If you're looking to play the over, then you go down and look for the 278s to 279s because you're getting a couple extra yards. And I know if you're sitting there saying it doesn't matter, believe me, I've been on the wrong side of those every once in a while where you wish you had that extra yard or two where it actually does matter. So, shop around. You guys can get over to the prop shop on FTN Bets. You put it in, you're going to see where all those lines are here. But the most important part of why I like the under on this here, since week 8, the Bengals have not allowed a 300-yard passer. The last guy to throw for 300 yards against the Bengals is my boy Mike White from the New York Jets. You guys didn't think I was going to get a New York Jets reference into a Super Bowl show, but I had to do it at least once in my life. Mike White, though, the last guy to throw for over 300 against them, they run more, 3 lineman blitz, 8-man drop sets than anybody else in the NFL this year. And they force teams to throw those short passes underneath. So it is very tough to have one of those monster passing yard games against this team, which is why I like the under here. So 283.5 on FanDuel, the highest number we could find. That's the one you want to be under here today.
And Benny, you mentioned the importance of those extra yards. It is a different mindset than fantasy football. So if you're transitioning, you're dipping the toes into the water here. It doesn't matter if you want under. It doesn't matter if it's 283, 280. It doesn't matter if it's 5 yards. Doesn't matter. You just got to get that under. Same thing with the over. So those extra yard or two on either side really does make a difference. But Benny, all right, you mentioned the defensive side of the ball. I think this game is really fascinating from that angle. Cincinnati dramatically improved year over year on the defensive side. And then we know the Rams, the juggernaut that they are. Is there a defensive prop that stands out to you in this game?
Yeah, the one that what I'm trying to do here on the Super Bowl is I'm trying to look for best bets that we can cash some money on here. And the one that I like the most on the defensive side is actually Von Miller to get a sack. So in the last 6 games, I should say it this way. In the last 7 games, he's had at least 1 sack in 6 of those 7. The one game that he didn't was the last game against the San Francisco 49ers. And as a team, the Rams didn't even have a sack in that game. The San Francisco line did a really good job. Jimmy G did a great job of getting the ball out there fast. They did not get to him that whole day. I do not think that's going to happen here again today because the Bengals do not have the same type of offensive line that the San Francisco 49ers do. The Bengals this year were in the bottom 10 of the league for their pass protection grade. That's why I think we're going to see a lot more pressure being put on Joe Burrow here in this game. Now, like I said, Von Miller, 6 of the last 7 games, he's had a sack. Now, the number is minus 152 on FanDuel. Not a great number, but it's minus 180, minus 190 on sites like Unibet and Sugar House as well. So we're getting a really good discount on it here. And again, you start looking at the numbers. You could go to the odds calculator we have over on FTN Bets. You put in minus 152. It's going to spit out about a 62% number probability for you. And what that means is we would need Von Miller to get a sack in about 62% of the games or higher in order for us to cash on that. Well, if he's done it in 6 out of the last 7 games, that's a number that's more in the 80% range. So I do still think we have some value here on this number, even at minus 152. And then the other thing you got to think of too, every single one of these sports books is offering some kind of deposit bonus or risk-free bet, something where you can get double the bang for your buck here. So if you look at something that's very likely to happen, like a Von Miller sack in this game at minus 152, if you put in $1,000 and get a $1,000 bonus and put all of that on him, it's actually like you're doubling the odds there. So you're now basically getting it at like a plus 132, plus 135, somewhere in that range. And that would be like a 40% chance of happening. So if you tell me that I could bet on something that's probably about a 70 to 75% chance of happening and get the same payout as if it was only a 40%, I'm going to take that bet every single day. And that's a good way to make money.
And we have seen Joe Burrow that is sacked a few times in the playoffs here. He holds the ball too. It's not even just the offensive line. It's the fact that he'll hold the ball sometimes. Now the coaching staff has come out and said, hey, that's just a part of his game and we're not going to change that. But when you have Aaron Donald, and by the way, Jackson Carman banged up on the interior, Aaron Donald on the interior, Von Miller, a former Super Bowl MVP. I do like that call out there. Right after we get off here, I'm making that play.
Yeah, I love it as well. And I mean, we're going to talk same game parlays a little bit later on, but I have a couple where it's like him and Donald to have a sack. I mean, the total, Benny, is at 5.5. Jeff just talked about Burrow getting sacked a few times. He's like undersold it a little bit. You sacked 9 times against the Titans, and now he has to go up against this pass rush. Unbelievable. So, yeah, you could put both of those in. What do we think about the 5.5, Benny? What do we think here on the spot about 5.5? You can kind of lean to the over there?
I mean, I like it, but it would really depend on what you think the game is going to be played out like. If we're thinking this is going to be an under kind of game where there's a lot of field goals, probably a little bit more on the running. I mean, how many dropbacks do you really think that Joe Burrow is going to have? And it's not like listen, I know the line is bad, but he's not going to get sacked on every dropback here. So, to get to 5.5, that's a pretty big number. We're not talking about, they got to get over 2.5 sacks or 3.5 sacks. 5.5 means they're going to have to be in his face all day. If this game stays close, or if Cincinnati happens to have a lead where they're leaning a little more on the run game there, even in some of the early downs, you're really going to need the Rams to have the lead and get a bunch of those sacks late in the game when, since he's trying to throw themselves back into it. If you think that's the way this game's going to go, then yeah, I think it's a decent bet. I'm not so sure that that's the game script, though, that I think is the most likely here. So I would be staying away from that 5.5. I don't want to take the under. I don't want to bet against it. But you know what? You don't have to bet on everything here. We just have to pick out the ones we like. And I don't think I have an edge on either side of that.
That's something that Jeff has already talked about a couple of times. So you don't need to make the bet just for the sake of making the bet. But something that Burrow had said earlier when I watched the press conference, and he's well aware of the pressure that they're going to be able to dial up. And it seems to be the big narrative that everybody is talking about. Starting quickly would be good for the Bengals so that the Rams just don't tee off on Mr. Burrow. We'll get you out of here on this. One more best bet. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Cooper Kupp touchdown, right? I mean, we're not trying to overthink these things here. The guy scored 20 touchdowns on the season. He's got a touchdown in his last 5 games. He's got a touchdown in, I think, 7 of the last 9 or 8 of the last 9 games. He scored in 13 of the 20 games that they played in on the season. So let's do some simple math here. 13 of 20, 65% of the games they've played, he scored a touchdown. You look at this line on Caesars or on DraftKings, it's minus 200, minus 195. That's 65%. But on BetMGM, and I think FanDuel as well, at minus 165, now you're looking at like a 61, 62% chance for him to get a touchdown there. So now we have a little bit of an edge there. We got a 3 or 4% edge on that number when we look there. And again, you use some of these deposit bonuses or these risk-free bets, you double that, the amount of money you have there, you're going to get this at like a plus 130 in that case. And if you're there rooting for it in this game, I agree with a lot of what you guys have said so far in the show. I don't think this is going to be a 42-35 kind of game at the end of the day. I don't think there's going to be a ton of touchdowns. But if you told me that there's going to be a touchdown in this game, I don't think anybody thinks on either side that the guy who's going to score that touchdown is more likely to be Cooper Kupp. So if you could get a decent number like 165 on MGM or on FanDuel on him, you use some of those bonuses, some of those free bets as well, make it a little bit better odds for you. That's an easy thing to root for and something that's very likely to happen.
And Benny, I get this all the time doing projections for years for fantasy football. People will look at the projections and they'll say, he can't score 0.5 touchdowns. And it's like, no, that means 50% chance of scoring a touchdown. So let's go to Cooper Kupp and the projections at FTNFantasy.com right now, 80% chance. That's minus 400 to score a touchdown. If you can get it where, under minus 2, heck, I'd play it in minus 200. Yeah, sure. Yeah. You bet $1, you get 50 cents. It's almost a guaranteed 50 cents though. So absolutely love that call out. Another play that I think is a lock right here.
Oh man.
Yeah. When you look at the end of the season too, with these situations like this is the last football game we have here. So, take the easy money. Don't try to do something crazy. At the end of the day, if you made more than you started with, that's the name of the game. That's what you're looking to do.
Man, phenomenal season from Cooper Kupp. 13 100-yard games this year, an NFL record, 20 total touchdowns, 4 touchdowns in the playoffs. Jeff, you're talking about 0.8. Is that as high as you've done over the past years? Do you remember anybody standing out with the projection higher than that?
Receiving touchdown, probably not. I've had Derrick Henry at times at like rushing touchdown at like 1.1, which is insanity. But just the projections alone, it's unreal to project a player over 100 receiving yards. It just doesn't happen. And I have him at 106, and I'm thinking like, am I too low? Like this season has been outrageously good for Cooper Kupp. So yeah, I love that. I mean, you're talking, you have like a big edge on minus 165, minus 170, heck, minus 200.
And a good call out, Benny, as well, for some of the promotions that some of these books are offering. And as I mentioned off the top of the show, we have the Super Bowl betting guide, which you can catch over at ftnbets.com, and bets from multiple books with Super Bowl betting promotions in there as well. Benny Ricciardi, we appreciate you, dude. Benny's got plenty more bets over at FTN Network, our YouTube page as well. And of course, you got to check out Betting with Benny. One more segment here between Jeff Ratcliffe and myself. We're going to talk same game parlays. We're going to have some fun with some rapid fire questions as well. Keep her locked.
And welcome back. A little role reversal here for the FTN Big Game Super Show, tongue twister that it is. And why we are reversing roles right now is, well, pretty simple. I don't bet parlays. I'm a basic bro. I wear a backwards hat. I'm corny, right? And I just bet straight, receiving yards, receptions, in basketball, points, rebounds, assists. I'm corny. I'm basic. I'm not sexy like Chris Meaney is. And I've noticed when it comes to the NHL player props or just props in general, bets in general, that he does dabble in some parlays. I've noticed with the NFL, he does dabble with some parlays. So, Chris, I think parlays can really be an effective betting instrument in some instances. I'm not talking about going out and trying to get plus, 50,000 or whatever on some kind of crazy thing. You're getting those odds because it's not going to happen, right? You might as well just go out in your driveway, take that $100 and light it on fire, and it's probably going to be more entertaining. But it can be very effective if you use parlays right. So real quick here, before we dive into a couple same game parlays, why don't you break down just some basic strategy thoughts for people if they want to use parlays this weekend?
I think you said it perfectly. It's easy to put 5 or 6, 8 to 10 different options into a parlay and see that payout and think, oh my goodness, look at this. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to have to work for the next year. I got mortgage payments paid for the next year and a half if I cash this bet. But it's all about just trying to win some money here. And I do have a couple longer shot ones that we'll talk about here on this show. And I got a couple other ones in our bet tracker. You talked earlier about the rushing attempts for both quarterbacks at 2.5. Heck, you could just do that if you wanted to. You can include those two, include each team to have one field goal, and that will pay 4-1. Seems pretty simple enough. You just need a couple of things and away you go. But you have to paint the picture in your head of how you think this game is going to go. And some success that we've had over on Mean Streets with some same game parlays, for example, when the Rams played the Bucks, Leonard Fournette, 3.5 catches was his prop. And we also had Cam Akers, 2.5 catches was his prop. I thought both of those guys could get 3 to 4 catches. And I was thinking in my head, well, if they catch 3 or 4 passes, they're probably going to eclipse their receiving yard prop as well. So that's kind of how I like to look at things. And it's something that we're going to talk about here right away. And I'll just start here, Jeff, unless there's something that you wanted to say with same game parlays. I know that you're not a big same game parlay guy, but we're painting pictures here on how we think these games are going to go.
Yeah, exactly. And same game parlays, the ability to just do that too. it wasn't something we always had. That was the one thing you'd run into. All right, I like this, but wait, I can't do it. It's in the same game. I will say this, Chris, one area where I do think there is potentially an advantage, like quarterback passing touchdowns. If you paired those two up, that could be, if you think under on 2.5 for Stafford, over on 1.5 for Burrow. The odds by themselves, not very good. Put them together, you're going to get plus odds on it. I off the top of my head, I'm thinking probably plus 110, plus 120, something like that. So it turns two bets that you probably don't want to make because the juice isn't worth the squeeze to one bet that now is worth making. So that's how I use it. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's hear your first same game parlay for the big game.
So I have two, and this one is Rams Central at 9-1. As you see, I got Cooper Kupp to score a touchdown. We all seem to like Cooper Kupp to score a touchdown here, 20 in this season alone and 4 in the playoffs. I have Odell Beckham Jr. scoring a touchdown. Mr. Gilles Gallant will be happy about that. I have Cooper Kupp the over on 105 yards. Now, sometimes when I go with the yards and an over, I would take the catches as well, but 8.5 seems a little too high for me, so I left that off, and I went with Kupp over 105 yards. Something that he's done. He's cleared that number 13 times this season. We talked about his long catch at 27.5. Now, I don't have that in the same game parlay, but he's done that 15 times this season. 7-Eleven, the dude is always open. It's like you go into 7-Eleven at 3 in the morning, you get your cheese dogs, you get your Slurpees, and away you go. Cooper Kupp is always open, terrific route runner, and he's going to get his looks. Even if he doesn't get 9 grabs, I think he can still get to the over there. I like Odell Beckham Jr. in this game. I really do. So I'm taking the over in 16.5 receiving yards as well. And as you see, something that you talked about, I think that Kupp is going to find the end zone. I think OBJ finds the end zone. So why wouldn't I take Matthew Stafford over 1.5 passing touchdowns? That's the correlation that you get there. Let me just give a little bit of love to OBJ. In the regular season, his reception percentage was at 56%. He was averaging 38 receiving yards per game. He only had 2 first downs per game. And then the playoffs happened. 83 reception percentage, just the highest by a wide receiver over the last 10 postseasons, a minimum of 20 targets. 78.7 receiving yards per game, 4.3 first downs per game. I've noticed they've tried to get him involved early. Twice the first play of the game has been a reception to Odell Beckham Jr. I mentioned Kupp, doubles, safety over the top, trying to say, okay, I know it's difficult, and we've seen Kupp light up everybody in the NFL, but let's just try to double this guy. And that could leave some one-on-one man coverage for Odell Beckham Jr., which I alluded to earlier, targeted 11 times in those scenarios, man coverage, 10 grabs. Only Kelsey and Kupp have more first down grabs in the playoffs than Odell Beckham Jr. And if you just look like a guy like Stafford, man, what a season he is having. Talked about 315 yards. If he does that on Sunday, it'd be the most passing yards of all time in the playoffs. When he has 2.5 seconds to throw, he has the best QBR. He has the best completion percentage. He is number 1 in yards per attempt. They're going to be able to protect him. And what I've noticed from Stafford, earlier in the season, it was certainly Kupp. And when the game is on the line, it definitely has been Kupp. But at moments, it doesn't feel like Stafford needs to go to Kupp over and over and over again. He's a smart quarterback. When he sees Odell Beckham Jr. on one-on-one coverage, he's not afraid to throw his way. So, man, I know it may be only me and Drake. Apparently, I saw Drake have a $500,000 bet on OBJ over receiving yards. I don't agree with Drake too often, but I'm agreeing with him on this one, dude. I think he's going to be a big part of this game. So that's my first same-game parlay.
I like everything you said, but I gotta take you to task here. There's only one 7-Eleven. His name is Chris Hogan, okay? But I do like the correlation.
Hunter Renfro?
Is he? Are they putting it on him? It's the original Chris Hogan.
Right.
But correlations can also work with individual plays. So if you happen to like, let's say you do like Odell for the over on the receptions, over on 5.5 receptions, I would almost invariably then play the over on the receiving yards, unless it's outlandish, and it's not. At 60.5 on some books, 63.5 is the highest that I've seen it. So I do like that also as a betting instrument, even if you're not parlaying. Now, you gave us the Rams side. Let's hear the other side. Let's hear the Bengals same game parlay.
All right, we got the Bengals one here. It doesn't pay out as much, but this one really does correlate. So I think we all agree that the Bengals can keep this close. I do feel like the Rams win this football game. I have Joe Burrow over 279 passing yards. You know what I did? I looked at Jeff Ratcliffe's projections, and he had the over there. Jokes aside, but I know you feel me on that one. 25 plus completions, 35 plus attempts. I have Jamar Chase over 74.5 receiving yards. I have Joe Mixon over 19.5 receiving yards, and I have T. Higgins over 64.5 receiving yards. Now, that number is not a number that you can get as a single when you're looking, so I've kind of brought it down just a little bit. And Jill's alluded to this earlier, but, just to kind of hammer that point home, over the past couple playoff games, 103 yards for Higgins, 96 his last 2 playoff games. He's cleared this number, 64.5, in 6 of his past 9 games, and over the last 4 Cincinnati losses, all clears. Average of 106.7 yards and 8.74 targets over that span as well. We talked about Mixon being a true bell cow back this year with a little bit of Samaje Perine sprinkled in. 19.5 receiving yards. Again, not a number. 27.5 really everywhere you look. 43.5 receiving yards per game over his last 5 games. He has 15 targets in the playoffs and 29 targets over his last 5 games. And then Jamar Chase, he's cleared 74.5 in 4 of his last 5 games. Yes, I am worried about Ramsey, but we've seen Ramsey get torched here in the playoffs. I think we could see a bit of a base defense, and if Chase is having his way, then maybe they make some adjustments. But this is a number that he's cleared in 4 of those last 5 games, not including week 18. As for the attempts, I do feel like this is going to be a game where Joe Burrow's going to have to throw the football here, especially if they are down in the game. Let's get it out quick. We talked about how that's kind of not really his game, but with the pressure that's going to be dialed up, I don't believe that this is going to be a 20-plus carry game for Joe Mixon. I think they're going to work on getting the ball out quickly, whether it's some screens and some bubbles, and that would obviously benefit the over 25 completions. But for the attempts, you look back at the back of his football card and you see, he's only cleared this in 8 of the last 14. It doesn't seem like this is a number that I really like. But again, looking at some of the losses in games that they have trailed, he has done this, and he's done it in back-to-back playoff games here, 38 and 37. I also have this same game parlay flipped. Instead of the yards, the catches, because Jeff, these playmakers are going to have to make plays, especially if Burrow is getting the ball out quickly around the line of scrimmage. They're going to have to make plays to get to those yards. I also think it's a pretty good option to maybe take Burrow's maybe just take his completions and his attempts, and then take Chase, Mixon, and Higgins catches in there as well. So a couple different options for you.
If it were not for backs of football cards and baseball cards, I would not be sitting here talking to you right now. That is the reason why I'm doing this job. That is where the original obsession with these stats came from. Also, Chris, great call out there. Instead of looking at what you have in the single prop markets, when you do these same game parlays, you do have the opportunity to choose different numbers, different lines. And yes, you're not getting as good odds on them individually, but when you put them into that parlay, that's where things become very interesting. So great call out there. All right, we got to round out the show, Chris, and we're going to do it. We're going to go back and forth, toe to toe here really quickly. Just a little rapid fire, because we got to have some of these bets that are, we've just been talking about like straightforward stuff, some of the fun stuff. I'm going to start with an obvious one. Who wins MVP? Your pick.
I know I have Kupp in the tracker at 7-1 for the MVP, but my love for OBJ, I feel like he's going to have a game as well. It's going to be really hard to shut down Kupp. If OBJ has that game, Matthew Stafford is the MVP. You can get that at plus 140, and he would become the 9th first overall pick to win the Super Bowl, and he's going to have the MVP as well in his first year out of Detroit. I got one for you. First touchdown of the game, jersey number, over or under 23.5.
That's such a good line too. I hate that because I'm like, Cam Akers is 23. Jamar Chase. But you know what? I think Joe Mixon scores the first touchdowns. Ooh. And his number is over. And I know I'm getting favorable odds on the over, so we're going over, baby. All right, one more from me. I like this one because, we've been talking about specific players, but this one's more general regarding rushing or receiving yards. All right. Will any player top 150, and it could be either one, not combined, 150 rushing yards or 150 receiving yards?
Man, it seems like a high number. When you look at Kupp, he's done this 3 times. He had
Right.
183 against Tampa Bay. My goodness. It's just a little too high for me, Jeff. I know I have the over 105.5 for Cooper Kupp, but I got to take the under 150. And then to round out the show, and I hope we do get this because it would just make for drama, will there be a fourth quarter comeback in the Super Bowl?
Yes, there will be. Because I do think this is a game where Cincinnati actually reverses course from what we saw in the previous, their previous game. They lead early on in this game, and I think the Rams fight their way back, and then ultimately they come back. They win by a field goal. I still think it's going to be a field goal win. So yes, and I think this is going to be great. I don't care what color the Gatorade is. I don't care how long the national anthem is, but I do think there's going to be a fourth quarter comeback.
Something I know you care about is the halftime show. Something I've learned about you this week is you're a big
Yes.
Kendrick Lamar fan.
Yes.
Yes. So enjoy that as well. Do we got a prediction out of you? Rams win the game? You got one?
Rams win the game, and I'm sticking to my projections. So I can round the projections. It's 26-23 would be the projections, technically speaking. But yeah, I think the Rams win by 3 in this one. So Bengals cover at 4.5. Rams win. Hey, all around. It's going to be a great game, though. And the brisket, Chris, on Sunday is going to be delicious.
No doubts. One of these days we'll get together and watch the Super Bowl, and I'll taste that brisket. My man, this has been an absolute pleasure. 27-24 for me for the Rams. Jeff, fantastic to chop it up with you as usual. A shout out to Matthew Freedman, Benny Ricciardi, Gilles Gallant, George and Tino. I know a lot of work was put into this show as well, so we really do appreciate you guys and everybody hanging out, watching. Enjoy the Super Bowl and let the winners be yours. We'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.